This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
Happy Friday. What's going on? It's the Friday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga flying solo with you. As you can see here, clearly no Jay Rosehill, who, as mentioned, is a firefighter. That's right. He has a real job. So don't fret. 3 hits with Rosie. If you've missed it the first time we did it, we'll be coming along in about 5 or 7 minutes from now. Pretty much designed for whenever Rosie can't be on with us. He'll give us like 3 hits. So it's around 3-4 minutes, his thoughts. And as we know, a pretty big weekend ahead here for the Maple Leafs, a back-to-back. I'll get into the Liljegren conversation later on, but they're home to Boston on Saturday, in Carolina to take on the Hurricanes coming up on Sunday. Also, don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, leave us a review. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest. And as per usual, there's always so much happening. So if you have comments, concerns, questions, pretty much anything you want to get off your chest, as you see down below here on YouTube, give it to me, and I'll bring it up a bit later on here on the show, maybe even with Jackie Redmond coming up. That's right. In about 10 minutes from now, from the NHL Network and WWE, Jackie Redmond, a noted Leafs fan, by the way, will drop by. We'll get her thoughts on this. I guess you can call it turbulent start. Yeah, you can. I know they won against Philadelphia the other night, and the big conversation in these parts is about Austin Matthews, and certainly we'll get to that too. But we're going to touch every base here with Jackie coming up in about 10, so don't miss that. And certainly, I think when you look at the wrestling perspective, you look at the Leafs perspective, there's no shortage of things to touch on. But first, let's get over the boards. And so, as mentioned, for the second straight weekend, the Toronto Maple Leafs playing in a back-to-back. Let's hope it went better than last weekend. And unfortunately, it's 2 tougher opponents. Last weekend, it was Los Angeles and Anaheim. This time around, well, how about the Boston Bruins? They've won 10 of 11 games to start the season. That's the home game coming up on Saturday. And yeah, on Sunday, the Carolina Hurricanes, who are 7-2-1. So that's right. Combined records of 17-3-1. That's what they're looking at starting this weekend. But certainly as we segmented the schedule, we knew it was going to be pretty tough in the month of November. I think the favorable thing for this Leafs team, 9 of the 15 games on home ice. And as mentioned, they took care of business back on Tuesday, back on Wednesday, against the Philadelphia Flyers, a 5-2 win. John Tavares was unbelievable in that game, and they need more of that. Certainly the big story going into tomorrow's game, too, will be the activation off injured reserve for Timothy Liljegren. Underwent a hernia surgery in the offseason, so that's a big-time boost. And as you see in the thumbnail, you know, how much of a difference maker can Liljegren truly be in the grand scope of things for this Maple Leafs team? I think you're sadly mistaken if you think he's going to be some sort of savior. Like, I think he's a really good depth guy. I think at bits and pieces throughout his early career, he's played around 75 career games in the NHL. You see there on the graphic, 74. He's shown spurts and abilities to play up the lineup, but he hasn't been a mainstay. He struggled with consistency, which happens a lot for young defensemen, by the way, in the NHL. So I'm not going to sneeze at that fact, but I think if people think this guy's going to be a savior, come in and stabilize things, I just think you're sadly mistaken. If anything, I think he has the opportunity to be a guy that elevates himself right away in the lineup. And maybe right away it starts on Saturday playing with, say, a Morgan Rielly. Because my expectation, at least, I know the proper decision would be taking Justin Holl out of this lineup, but it's not going to happen. The other move would be Victor Mete, who I thought pretty decent so far in the handful of games that he's had the opportunity to play in. I think he's looked pretty decent. But I think it's very, very likely at this point in time that it's going to be Mete that comes out of that Leafs lineup. It's going to be Liljegren that comes in on Saturday. And I think there's the opportunity, clearly, distinctly for him to step into a top 4 look right away. But that's going to be the major question for me is, can he be a difference maker? I'm not saying an all-star by any stretch. I think you have to temper your expectations with this type of player. Again, has struggled with consistency throughout his early NHL career. But can he be an upgrade over Giordano? Can he be an upgrade over Rasmus Sandin? Can he be an upgrade over Justin Holl? Those are the questions I think surrounding, what Timothy Liljegren can bring to the table from the Maple Leafs perspective. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. I'll get to Liljegren. I'll get to Ilya Samsonov later on. It's a back-to-back. We know how the analytics community feels about that. But for now, as I teed up off the top, let's get 3 hits with Rosie.
Hey guys, number one hit I'm starting off with today. Austin Matthews, there's tons of talk about whether he should have fought or whether he started all of that and was asking for it and then backed down. All that seems kind of crazy to me. I think he handled himself perfectly. Konechny went right after him purposefully. And instead of diving or falling down and grabbing your face or looking up for the ref like we've seen guys in this league do, he gives him a chop hard right over the laces, which is a stinger, then gives him a little bit of a spear almost, and then two shots also. And then by that time the boys are jumping in already. And then when they got loose again and he came at him again, Austin was the first one to give him a shot too before Bunting went and jumped on there. And how could you ask any more out of the guy? Like, that's perfect. Some guy's coming at you. We don't want you to fight him, for crying out loud. You re-injure your wrist and all of a sudden you're out for another 5 weeks. Last thing anyone in Leaf Nation wants to see. So I think it all went down amazing. Number two thing is kind of this foregone conclusion that goalies all of a sudden can't play back-to-back nights. I believe Samsonov is only going to play one of them tonight, either Saturday or this weekend rather, Saturday or Sunday. And I just don't understand why you can't play back-to-backs as a goalie. You think of like a defenseman who's playing 28 minutes a night. He's literally blocking shots also. He's smacking himself and others against the boards. He's a workhorse out there. And after the game, he does his thing and he wakes up in the morning and he's got another one to play. It's not even on the possibility sheet that guy doesn't play, but it's not even a possibility that a goalie can play back-to-backs. I realize you only have one of them and they're very valuable. But who says they're made of porcelain all of a sudden? Why do you think that the risk for injury goes up just because it's a back-to-back night? Think if a goalie plays one night, is feeling good, gets, ice tub at the end of the game, does some electrolytes, does his stretching routine, wakes up in the morning, he's ready to play again. This is the first week in November, and these guys are professional athletes who treat their bodies like bloody temples. You need him to get, hopefully 4 points this weekend. Maybe you get 3 and have a great weekend, but I mean, nothing against Källgren by any stretch. Good goalie with a good future ahead of him, and he's developing, and I wish he'd got his first win yet, but he hasn't, and I don't think now's the time to try to give him that. Play your number one goalie back-to-back and try to get as many points as you possibly can. I need to ask Mike McKenna or someone why that's not on the table anymore. I'm sure a guy of his era would have played 3-3s in their day, and he did just fine. Last thing, speaking of the weekend, huge weekend for the Leafs right now. Saturday, you got Boston. Sunday, Carolina. Both premier teams right now, especially Boston. But at least we're riding high after that Wednesday game against Philadelphia. I think the guys really were able to channel into what they need to do to start playing good hockey. Hopefully, it was resilience. It was passion. They had the energy and the effort. Obviously, on the tails of Johnny T, he led the way, no question. But things are starting to happen, hopefully, and the thing is consistency. Can this team channel that kind of play at will? Because if they're going to go deep in the playoffs, anyone that does is able to find their game when they need to. And hopefully this weekend is big for Leafs Nation for putting some building blocks together and starting to be able to figure out who they are. I'm hoping 4 points, obviously, but wouldn't 3 be nice? That's my goal, is to get 3 points on this weekend. I think that'd be incredible against two huge teams. Statement weekend here, Leafs Nation. Let's do it.
You got to love that. And the fire horn sounds as well for Jay Rosehill. Really putting things into perspective for the Maple Leafs coming up this weekend, again, against the Boston Bruins, against the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, producer Alex, do we have Jackie? We will have Jackie Redmond on here momentarily. But certainly, I think when you look at the Maple Leafs perspective, I think Rosie hit the nail on the head as we welcome in today's guest from the NHL Network and WWE. It's Jackie Redmond. Jackie, what's going on?
What's up, buddy? Last time I saw you, we were on like a 12-hour outing in New York City.
Yes, we were. Should we explain this first and foremost? So I went to New York City for the very first time as a grown-ass man, 33 years of age. And good old Jackie Redmond takes me under her wing, and we go on the pub crawl of all pub crawls. 12 hours later, I finally got back to my hotel.
Yeah, don't lie. It started out as a brunch. Me, you, Lauren Gardner, Avs fans know her well. That's what happens in New York, the city that never sleeps. You think you're going out for brunch and that's it, and next thing you know, you're out all day at night.
My lasting memory of that day was that TikTok spot. Do you remember it where people were lined up to get like a croissant or something like that? What was that?
Yeah, there's a TikTok croissant that has taken TikTok by storm in New York City, and people line up around the block for it. And it looks. I've never had one because I'm not willing to wait in the line. Like I don't have the patience. So
Yeah. It's pretty similar to me when it comes to like going out here in Toronto. If I have to wait in line, I'm not staying. Like I'm just moving on to the
yeah,
next
I'm
establishment.
past
So
the
Jackie,
point. Like I don't wait anymore.
yeah, even for food, like there's no way, unless it's like a world-renowned restaurant, I will certainly do it. But thank you so much for making some time. You're the busiest broadcaster I've ever seen in my life. Like how many different things are you doing on a daily basis now?
Well, I have 3 jobs. So I've got NHL Network, of course, and then I do games for TNT, which has been exciting, but crazy because I always do West Coast games for them, and NHL Network is on the East Coast. So I literally take a red eye, do the game, take a red eye back. It's wild, but I love it in this sick kind of way. And then, of course, WWE Network. And then I have to keep up on social media. So I'm trying to juggle Instagram, Twitter, Be Real. Don't follow me on Be Real. I'm terrible on there, but
Why every time we talk, it gets to that conversation about Be Real? I don't know if you remember this
I
from our
don't
boozy
know.
brunch that turns into 12 hours later, but Be Real is always a topic of conversation with you.
Well, because it's what the kids are doing these days, I'm trying to stay cool. I'm trying to stay with it and Be Real. It's tough because I get the notifications and I'm usually doing one of 2 things. I'm either in a gym or I'm in the studio, and I'm like, am I just going to post the same picture every single day of me doing the exact same things? I don't know.
I think you're onto something. You talk about the kids. You're a Swiftie. I know this from your Instagram post. That Antihero song, it's on repeat right now. I won't lie. I'll come out clear and say that. So my question to you, which Taylor Swift song would best represent, describe life as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan? I have 3 options in my world, at least, because I did some deep digging for this interview. Shake
Ooh.
It Off, Bad Blood, or Wildest Dreams?
Um, okay, I didn't know we were going whole catalog here though. So those are my options. Shake It Off, Bad Blood, and what was the third one?
Wildest Dreams. But you can go anywhere with this. You're the Swiftie.
I think Shake It Off is a good option because we've had to shake off a lot of really embarrassing, sad
There you go.
losses over the years, especially of late in the last decade. So Shake It Off is a solid choice, I would say. But
Thank
for
you.
me as a
Yeah.
female, I think Mad Woman is a great choice too because I'm just constantly mad at this team in
No,
the
like
most
it's pretty.
loving way.
Yes. And it's funny you bring that up because you know that feeling, like that game 7 feeling from like a decade ago where they blew that 4-1 lead to Boston? Doesn't it seem like you get that feeling over and over again every time they outdo themselves? You lose to a Zamboni driver, you lose to Anaheim. It seems like it happens like 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. But is it just me, saying that as somebody who watches the Leafs religiously? Does this happen to every team, Jackie?
I do think every team has bad losses, but I'm not quite sure every team has bad, embarrassing losses consistently. Hot take though, the Zamboni driver loss doesn't really bother me that much. Like it never has. Like it was a funny story. I know, but it just was like, okay, this is just kind of a funny thing that happened in the regular season. It's whatever. It was the David Ayers game, good fairs, and it didn't bother me that much. People love to bring that one up when they're coming down hard on the Leafs, like they lost to a Zamboni driver. I just think it's kind of funny. I didn't really bother me even in the moment, really.
Trust me. So as you remember, I used to be the Leafs radio host in Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I was at the game and I could not believe it. In fact, I went right to my betting account and I'm like, I'm hammering the Leafs. There's no way they lose this game. Like this is comparable to like a beer league goalie. I kid you not, coming into the game and beating a professional hockey team, not just any professional hockey team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So while you have that stance, I could not believe my mind because the Leafs were so tentative to shoot on this guy because they felt bad about it.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know that that's the case. Now, first of all,
Okay.
don't get me wrong. It's crazy that it happened. An amazing, wild, jaw-dropping story, right? But it's hockey. Like, there's so much randomness and chance and whatever involved in hockey. And you have to, like, the team in front of David Ayres that night was a pretty good hockey team, right? So, like,
Yeah.
they really sheltered him in that game. So, yes,
Okay.
it's not embarrassing. It just doesn't bother me. It's not something, let me rephrase it all. This is the take. It's not something that when I think about the devastation or heartbreak of the last 10 years for the Leafs, it's not something that makes like my top 5. It just
Okay.
doesn't.
Well, it's a long list, but that's why I like you, Jackie. You're
Yes.
level-headed
Maybe
because
that's
I'm
the
like
real
the
problem.
opposite. Yeah, exactly. That in lies the problem. You're level-headed. I'm just crazy. Like one loss to Arizona, I was losing my shit. But I'm sure you've kept tabs on the media shitstorm here. They're going nuts, calling for everybody's head. What did you make of the first month of the season? Were you also going crazy?
Oh yeah, I was being dramatic for sure. Because
Good.
it's not like the Leafs just had a, tough start to the season. They're losing to teams that they should be laying the smackdown on, right? Like teams that they should just be walking in and wiping the floor with. And I think for Leafs fans, especially, it just hit harder this year because it's not early. Like it's year 6, it's year whatever it is. It's not, we've seen this story. And when you think about, the loss in the playoffs to Montreal, right? Blowing the 3-1 series lead. The loss last year, like, yeah, is better, but you still lost in the first round. You didn't get out of the first round. So for fans, it's like, how can you come into another season and not just show up guns a-blazing, trying to prove yourself and just dominate the league from day number 1, especially against the Arizonas, the Montreals, because where do you need to find motivation for that one? It's right there. And San Jose and the Ducks, and the list goes on and on. So I think Leafs Nation was right to be dramatic. They were right to be upset. It's years of built up frustration and resentment. So yeah, it's been a brutal start for the Leafs. This weekend is going to tell us, I think, a lot about what this team really is, not based on how many points they take out of Boston, Carolina, Vegas, but the way that they play in those games. That's what I'm watching. To me, like, it's not about how many wins or how many points they take out of that 3-game little set there. It's, what do they look like? How do they handle the adversity of it? Do they look like they can compete with Boston, with Carolina, with Vegas? So we'll see.
Is this a hot take if saying if they play Shalgren this weekend, they're punting a game? Like, is that a fair assessment? Because we seem to have this conversation a lot on this show where it's like analytics, and I get it. You don't want to play your number one back-to-back. But in my opinion, Jackie, if there's a reason, if there's a moment to play your back-to-back, it's this weekend and play Ilya Samsonov in both games. Agree or disagree?
I think you have to contemplate what message that would send, right? Like, we're early in the season, we're like 10 games in or whatever we are, and you're going to play Samsonov back-to-back nights. It seems a little bit desperate, maybe, in a situation where you're playing Carolina, the second night of a back-to-back
Mm-hmm.
on the road as well with travel. So it's I don't know that it's the right move. And for Shalgren, like, I mean, I feel bad for this guy, right? He is supposed to be in the American Hockey League. Even there, his numbers aren't sensational. And I don't think the Leafs have really played, all that well in front of him in the games that he has played. So I think I would still play Shalgren. I know that might be something Leafs fans don't want to hear, but I just wonder if you play Samsonov back to back, it's like, what message does that send Shalgren, who, by the way, like, you might need more often than you would like this season? And what message does it send your team? So that you're worried, that you're panicking, that it's a must-win set of games where, yeah, it's not that early, but I don't think we're worried about the Leafs making the playoffs at this point. Like, that offense is going to find itself. It did on Wednesday night against Philly. So yeah, I just think you have to think, and this is the situation the Leafs put themselves in, not to go on a crazy
Yes.
tangent here, where every little thing they do, it means something. It's scrutinized. How does it affect the players? How does it affect the coach? How does it affect everything? And we've seen that already with Sheldon Keefe. I mean, that guy's been put under a microscope. Everything he does gets analyzed, every decision. So I think I would just stick to the normal, play Samsonov against Boston, play Shalgren against the Canes, and like let the boys know, like, hey, can you actually put up a decent effort in front of this guy tonight? Like, that would be nice. That would help him immensely.
Yeah, because pardon the sarcasm, they haven't done that and tried that for the last 6 years, and there's been a response, right, with this Leafs team. Do you think it's time for a change in Toronto, Jackie, whether it be the GM or the coach?
I thought there should have been a change this offseason. That was my opinion. And really, when Dubas said, I'm going to run it back, I'm going to keep this core together, it's like, okay, so you're not going to change the core. You're not going to change the coach. You're not changing yourself. So what, you're not going to change anything despite year after year of the same result? To me, it's like, I could understand it after the Montreal series, right? Like, that's devastating, embarrassing way to go out. They were better than that. They should have beat Montreal. Like, I understand running it back after Montreal. But then you still lost. And I don't care that you got respect in the handshake line. And I don't care that you did actually have a good showing against Tampa. Like, yes, you played very well. Still laid an egg in game 4. Laid an egg, no-showed game 4. I will always go back to that. I was pissed about it then. I'm pissed about it now. Like, you're up 2-1 in Tampa in a series that you have to win. And you no-show in a game. Is that the players? Is that the coach? Is it the roster construction? Those are all the questions. But to get back to the original question, I thought that there should have been, if they were going to trade a player in the offseason, I thought they should make a coaching change. Not because I don't think Sheldon Keefe's a good coach. I do think he's a good coach. I just don't know that he can take this specific group further than he already has. Take that next step with them as a first-time NHL coach, as someone that doesn't have as much pedigree. I think, this conversation around the Stars and the coach and what is that relationship and how do you speak about them in the media? How do you send messages to them? I think that is very, very much something that is an issue the Leafs need to work out, because I don't think that they've figured out the answer to that question as an organization yet. And I'm not sure that, coming into this season that Sheldon Keefe maybe should have been the guy. But again, like, I want to say, I do think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach, right? I know the records, I know all of that. But at a certain point, and it happens to every coach, you reach that chapter where it's like, okay, am I the guy that can take them to that next level? And I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, right? Like, Dubas isn't firing him. So we're going to find out if Keefe can figure this thing out this season.
No, it's an expiry date. I always like to reference it to John Tortorella. He always seems to have an expiry date everywhere he coaches. And I think, to your point, the coach is usually the scapegoat. Well, I think it's probably, yeah, exactly. I think he's a scapegoat. He will be the scapegoat. I think ultimately this falls on the GM. I'm still looking for that killer instinct. Remember the one from 2 years ago? They have a catchphrase every offseason. 2 years ago, they were in search of that killer instinct. I guess the search party ended.
Yeah, I know. And, to go back, like, your question before, right, was like, do you think they should have made a change in the offseason? My answer was yes. But now that we're here, right, like, we did a segment the other day on our show on NHL Network, blame rankings. So, like, if you had to rank the blame, because there's blame to go around, right? Like, it's never just one thing. Like, and you had to go management, players, and coach, like, what order would you put it in? And I really thought for a long time that I might put Sheldon Keefe third on that list, because the players are good and the core has to perform. And that is what the theory of this team is that if those 4 do what they can do, they're going to win, right? But I do think it's a flawed roster. I think it lacks depth in every position. It lacks depth at forward. The bottom 6, I don't think, has provided a lot to this point this year. Minus Kampf. I think that the defense lacks a lot of depth, and it's even scarier when you see a team like the Boston Bruins doing what they're doing. And what do they have, right? They have Hampus Lindholm now, who's just like carrying things on the back end while Charlie McAvoy's out. But when he comes back, they got McAvoy and Lindholm. Even the Sabres, right? Like Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, who despite being very young has looked pretty good actually for a young defenseman coming into the league. That's 2 powerhouses on the back end, right? The Leafs, what do they have? Like, yes, Morgan Rielly is a good defenseman, but he's not Charlie McAvoy. And I don't think he's Hampus Lindholm either. And then Jake Muzzin is hurt all the time. So even if you were to get an effective Jake Muzzin, you can't rely on him being in the lineup. So the back end for me is spooky. I know Halloween's over, but it's scary.
No, it is very scary, and I feel that way about Justin Hall. I'm happy we went like 15 minutes here, didn't bring up Justin Hall. It's been a work in progress. That's the best I could put it for Justin Hall. Okay, last one, I'll let you go. We got to tie in your wrestling because you know I'm a big wrestling fan. Which WWE superstar, past or present, best depicts the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm thinking The Miz because they've had the glitz and glamour. They've done their things in the past, but they're also prone to embarrassment too, like this current storyline.
How dare you? The Miz has won things. The Miz has won a lot. Grand Slam champion, is he not? Like
he is,
the
but
Miz
the Leafs won back in the day. The Leafs won back in the day too.
Okay, well, we're not talking about the 67 Leafs here on this show, all right? Like, Miz wasn't even around in 67, so that's not even fair. He didn't even be alive. Okay. But I will say, right, like the Miz has reached the mountaintop. The Leafs haven't. So wrestling fans will know this comparison well. I'm going to go with Bray Wyatt because Bray Wyatt, he looks good. He sounds good. He makes you think he's going to do big things. And then he never freaking wins. He never wins. So I'll go Bray Wyatt. How's that? What do you think of that one?
I love that answer. And that's why I asked you the question, because I knew you'd have a witty response to that, Jackie. So we'll leave it at that. I know my co-host was disappointed he could be here today, but we'll have you on down the road. Appreciate you taking some time today.
Yeah, send my best to Jay Rosehill and keep up the good work, you guys.
You as well. Take care. That is Jackie Redmond of the NHL Network and WWE, always bringing it, and just a solid response. I didn't even think of Bray Wyatt, who's back in WWE a couple weeks ago. And that was no shot at The Miz, by the way. I'm a big-time wrestling fan. It was just more so like I'm trying to correlate and compare the Toronto Maple Leafs to what they'd be or who they'd be as a WWE superstar. So make sure to give Jackie a follow. She's tremendous, does great work for TNT, the NHL, and also WWE. For now, we're going to get to the wrap-up. It's brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. I love how confident I was on yesterday's show. So number one, I'm like, here we go. Shot props on PointsBet Canada, must-win territory. Then I throw you Mika Zibanejad, who's got like 1 billion shots in 4 games, plus money. What happens? Well, guy gets 1 shot on goal, and they play the big bad Boston Bruins. But we're going to get back to it tonight. I'm going back to a shot prop. Give me Victor Olofsson of the Buffalo Sabres, over 2.5 shots on goal. They're playing Carolina in the back-to-back. Antti Raanta expected to go in that game. Olofsson's cleared in 4 straight. He has 20 shots on goal in the past 4 games. And as mentioned, the Carolina Hurricanes on the back-to-back. So I'm hoping for some better love on the shot prop market on this Friday as opposed to Thursday. And I think the price is pretty decent as well when it comes to Victor Olofsson, who loves shooting the puck. We saw this a couple years back. He's shooting it once again. And, of course, there's attachment there in the top 6 to the big boys and certainly on the power play too. So that's my look for today. Victor Olofsson over 2.5 shots on goal. With that in mind, I'm going to wrap. I'd like to thank Jay Rosehill first and foremost for his 3 hits with Rosie. Knocked it out of the park again. Jay Rosehill won't be back with us on Monday. He'll be back on Tuesday. He's working once again, but 3 hits with Rosie will come on Monday. And certainly Jay will have a lot to say, considering the Leafs have a back-to-back this week. And again, at home to the Boston Bruins, then visiting the Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday. And lastly, I'd like to thank Jackie Redmond for dropping by. Again, make sure to give her a follow on Instagram, Twitter, Be Real, wherever the hell she is these days. She's doing amazing work. But for now, I'm going to bid you farewell. TGIF, another Friday in the books, another week in the books of Leafs Morning Take. Enjoy your weekend.